Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I'm delighted to have Dr. Jennifer Nash, and she is a board certified executive coach. She's got a consulting experience, leadership. She's done it all. And she helps Fortune 50 organizations prioritize people to power performance. And I'm really happy to have her on the show to talk about her ideas about being human, leading, leadership, thriving workplace cultures, and I'm happy to have her on the show. So, Jennifer, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Christopher. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So, getting started, kind of talk about, what I love starting out with people's power stories and talk about yourself, your journey, and we'll dive right into the conversation.
Yeah, so I'm from the Midwest. I'm based in the United States. I just moved to Austin, Texas, and I run an executive coaching business. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the Go Blue instead. But yes, there's lots of UT fans around here. It's very orange. So I run an executive coaching business here in Austin. I also do management consulting work, and I do leadership assessment. Oh,
Mm.
and I just wrote a book, as you can see back here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. Be human, lead human. I'm sure it's on Amazon for all the audience. The links are going to be in the resources and the show notes. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and Austin's a great city. So we'll
Yeah.
start just talking about just leadership fundamentals and what does it mean to you? Why is it crucial? And why are leaders failing our corporation society today?
Yeah, so I wrote this book because so many of the questions that clients asked me revolved around the content that ended up being in this book. And I felt like it was a way to bring, that advice and guidance to many people because I can't coach everyone. And so I decided to spend a lot of time researching the book, and then writing the book. It took me about 8 years, to get all of this together. So it was quite a bit of time and investment. And I think what I see like in this new world of work is that leaders, they want to do well, right? They want to lead people well, but they simply don't have the tools in their toolkit that they need to lead people effectively, and to lead people how they want them to be, how they want to lead them, and how they want to be led. So I felt like if I could put those things into this book, it would help give leaders the tools that they need to be effective in today's changed world of work.
Yeah, and so kind of moving on. So we talk about, basically today. I'm been really fascinated with software and now AI as platforms of
Mhm.
scale. But kind of for the audience, we're still in this kind of industrial information where we're scaling businesses with people. So balancing people and performance, and how can leaders effectively balance the needs of their team members while driving performance and achieving organization goals. We talk about culture, where people feel included, motivated. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I think, that's one of the keys to being effective in today's world of work, right? We really want to have these workplaces and workspaces where people are engaged, right? And they want to come and do their best work. And so creating an environment and creating those conditions that allow that to happen are how we get people motivated, right? We can't motivate someone directly, but we can create the conditions that provide for that. And so what happened with COVID was people all of a sudden had this autonomy, right? And they had voice and they had choice in where and how they were going to get their work done. And when COVID started winding down and people started being required to go back to the office, it was almost like it was tone deaf that, oh, regardless of all these great results that we've achieved over the last, 2 years or 2.5 years while we were working remotely, we're just going to disregard all of that and have people go back to the office. Well, what happened? Because people were performing at a higher level when they were working remotely. Organizations showed that. We have research that shows that. So, leaders that want to go back to status quo and want to have everybody in the office, it's a little bit of outdated thinking. And we really need to have leaders today be thinking about how does AI interact with their organization? What is the
Hmm.
role of AI? How can they help their people adapt to that? And how can
Hmm.
they show up as a leader for the 21st century, which
Hmm.
means that the role of a leader has actually shifted from this command and controller back what we had prior to COVID to
Hmm.
this more of a coach and facilitator who helps
Hmm.
people understand what their jobs are, how their jobs will be impacted by AI, and then what that looks like going forward, and how to
Hmm.
help them integrate that all.
Yeah, and which brings me to my next question is, especially, and you mentioned AI, and AI is kind of the topic because um, when we first had the internet and websites and social media, cloud, and now so a lot of people realize they don't have to go to work. I think it was really interesting because Elon Musk put out a tweet saying, in the future, work is going to be optional. So, you're going to work because you want to, not because you have to.
Hmm.
So, in this age, basically, where with AIs coming in and displacing a lot of things,
Hmm.
how do leaders adapt to this? Because if I'm a leader, I'm thinking, if like workers don't show up or like they're just unreliable or, it's hard to
Hmm.
find talent, I'm going to look for software, I'm going to look for robotics, I'm going to look for AI, those
Hmm.
things are reliable and it'll cut my costs too. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah. So I have lots of comments about Elon's comment, but we'll put that aside for right now. I think one of the things that people forget is that when technology changes and advances like this, yes, it displaces jobs. But historically, and we know this from research, that it creates more jobs than it displaces. So there will be new jobs created that we don't even know what they are right now. And for example, one new job that is now a big, high demand job is a prompt engineer, right? Somebody that understands how to ask questions, open-ended questions and closed-ended questions when appropriate, and guide AI to give them, like for ChatGPT, like the results that they're looking for. So that's a type of a job that didn't exist before ChatGPT, right? So we have
Yeah.
these types of examples that are going to continue to happen. And what I'm finding is that organizations that are focused on skills-based hiring, right? That is where the growth is happening. So they're not necessarily hiring for roles anymore. They're
Mm,
hiring for skills that people need to be effective in this new workplace. And
mm,
so leaders' job is to help people understand what is changing, right, with AI. What tasks will be different? How does this person's job and role fit into this new world? And if it is changing, which it likely is, to what extent is it changing? And what will they need to do instead of all of these other not remote, but routine tasks, right?
mm,
That the AI can actually do for them. So it will free up a lot of their time and they can
mm,
spend that time on things that make us a lot more human, which are our
mm.
creativity skills and our collaboration skills and our communication skills.
Yeah, I see AI because I see a lot of clerical and like administrative or like a lot of repetitive things. These
Yep.
can be replaced. And then things, higher order that you described like creativity and innovation, these will make room. And they say like the next 10 years is going to be the age of the creative in entrepreneurship is going to flourish. And this is kind
Mhm.
of what the fourth turning talks about. The book is really great for the audience. So kind of, uh, moving past that, talk about just kind of challenges and misconceptions. What are common challenges, misconceptions that leaders face when transitioning? How can they overcome? What problems do you see leaders facing today that they need to get prepared for?
Yeah. So I think the first and foremost, what I see most and what I hear most often is that leaders, they don't understand AI, right? It's
Mhm.
this black box for them. And so very first thing I would recommend is get your head wrapped around what does AI actually mean? What is it, right? Is it the large language model? Is it something else? Like what does that actually mean? And then understand a little bit about how it works. You don't have to dive into the granularity. I don't understand the granularity. I'm not a software programmer, but at least have a concept of what this is, what it means, and what the possibilities are, and how it
Mhm.
relates to the work that you do. Like, for
Mhm.
example, if I want to, I'm an entrepreneur, right? So if I want to develop an online course for my book, I can go into ChatGPT and I can ask ChatGPT to develop me a course outline with structured modules, with different lesson plans, and timing and all of this for all of the structure. That saves me hours of creative time in trying to think through just that basic template. Then once I have the template, I can go ahead and fill in the content, right? Because we know AI isn't very good at context. It can spit out 75 pages of something that may not even be relevant, right? These are these AI hallucinations that people are talking about. So you need to have the business acumen and you need to have the awareness that what AI does give you, while it may be helpful to a certain extent, it may not always be accurate. And you need to always proof it to make sure what it's giving you is actually what is accurate and what is needed. So so I jumbled the answer to that, but there's a couple things in there that leaders should be doing as it comes to AI and what they should be looking ahead for and what they should be
Mhm.
watching out for.
Yeah. The other thing is a lot of my friends and colleagues, we kind of sometimes shoot the shit together and we talk about like a lot of their frustrations are one is hiring great talent
Mhm.
and finding great talent because they always complain they bring somebody on and it's not the right fit and they have to get rid of them
Yeah.
and all the good ones they leave because they go to start their own company or do something. So how
Yeah.
do leaders in this day where people have choice and we
Mhm.
can do pretty much we have a lot of free options now, what how do leaders manage talent?
Yeah, I love this question because I think to date we haven't done a very good job of this, right? And our HR systems and our performance evaluation systems and our metrics, it all reflects that. And so
Mm,
I think when we get right down to it, what we really need is for organizations to sort of retrofit the work to the person, right? So, in
mhm,
other words, somebody comes in and says, look, here are the skills that I have. This is the type of work that I love to do. What kind of job do you have that we can create that craft to this match? Or what can we create together that is a new job that maybe doesn't exist right now, but you guys need and you don't realize that you need? So, in other words, tailoring and customizing the work to the individual rather than force fitting the individual into a predefined role with a set of tasks.
yeah. Yeah, which brings me to my next question is when you talked when you're talking about HR and just performance reviews, it just brings me it kind of reminds me of the dinosaur age. It's like these things don't really work, and people are still there. There's this funny meme on Twitter where it's like people are in these cubicles and just kind of assembly, just like but moving on to the next question is, talk about, in your work, share some case studies, success stories where they successfully implemented your principles, had significant positive outcomes, and just kind of talk about, for the audience, if they're interested in working with you or contacting.
Sure. So I will tell you this one of the case studies that I have in the book. So there's an individual who is running a very large car company, and he came into the organization, and there was a lot of cultural issues that were going on, and so in addition to huge financial losses. And so
Mm,
this leader decided that they needed a new way of working in this
mhm,
organization, and so
mhm, mhm,
they created what they called the working together process, which is based on, human leadership principles and practices. And at the end of the day, when the CEO decided to retire, he had taken the stock price up 1,837% by simply using these principles and practices of helping people work together, being respectful of one another, communicating effectively, collaborating with one another, breaking down the silos that we so often see within organizations, and just clearly identifying what are the expected behaviors and laying out what happens when people don't adhere to those behaviors. And the interesting thing about that whole situation was that if someone didn't feel like that was the right cultural fit for them with these changes, then they could self-select out. They didn't have to stay, right? So
mhm.
people that were choosing to stay and choosing to work together in this different way, more effective way, were actually what drove the success of this organization to, heights that it had never seen before. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an example that I tell in the book of, principles and practices of human leadership being used effectively in a
Mm-hmm.
corporate setting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I know you had another thought that I think I interrupted you, so go. Please continue.
Yeah, that's okay. So I had another client I was talking with last week who was telling me how, she has to have this recurring meeting on her calendar because there are people in her organization who refuse to talk to one another. And
Mm-hmm.
they will complain to her about what the problem is, but they won't sit down with one another and talk about it and work it out. And so
Mm-hmm.
she has this recurring meeting that takes up time on her calendar and takes away time from her day so that she can essentially sit in a room and referee or moderate between these people. And
Mm-hmm.
so we had this conversation about, what's in the book and about how you can create a culture that has expected behaviors in it and what those expected behaviors are and be very clear and specific and direct. And
Mm-hmm.
then identify what will happen if people choose not to behave in that way, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I let her know, look, this is also an opportunity for you to be setting these boundaries and role modeling this behavior for people. Because at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, we're all adults. If people don't want to behave in that way, there's the door, for lack of a better term, and they can self-select out. So this happens all the time. It's not an isolated incident. And I know that it's very frustrating, for leaders, especially when they're in the situation and they're not sure how to handle it. So my book gives a lot of guidance and helpful tips and recommendations on how to create that structure so that you
Mm-hmm.
have a space where everyone respects each other, it's inclusive, and everyone collaborates so that they can achieve the common goals of the organization.
So well said. And I know we talked about I know we talked about AI, but I'm interested in hearing your uh vision of future trends and adaptations, and how can people check out the book and find you online and follow your social media, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they'd like to learn more, they can look up my website. I'm at drjennifernash.com. That's drjennifernash.com. There's a whole bunch about the book on my website. They can download a couple free chapters if they'd like to check it out before they purchase. They can purchase wherever they get their books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Chapters, lots of different places. I also have the Human Leader Index Assessment, which is a tool that they can take and assess themselves on how they fall on the human leader scale and get some recommendations with a personalized report on what they might want to look at to, become more of a human leader going forward. That index is complimentary and it's also on my website. And then there's also some other opportunities on my website, and I have an online course coming out this month as well for the book.
Yeah, so well said, and very like I said, thanks for so much for coming onto the podcast, and for all the audience out there. Be sure to check out Dr. Nash's socials. These will be all in the resources in the show notes. Be sure to check out her book as well. It'll be on Amazon. Leave a 5-star review, and with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Christopher. I appreciate it.